The Galactic Empire stretched across the stars like a gilded cage, its vast territories held together by a web of treaties, alliances, and the quiet, unyielding labor of its diplomats. For centuries, the empire had thrived on the illusion of unity, its leaders cloaking their iron-fisted rule in the velvet glove of diplomacy. At the heart of this system were the women, brilliant, resourceful, and perpetually underestimated. They were the negotiators, the mediators, the ones who smoothed over the cracks in the empire's facade. But beneath their polished exteriors, a storm was brewing, one that would shatter the empire's complacency and rewrite the rules of power. Commander Lyra Voss stood at the center of this gathering storm. A seasoned diplomat with a reputation for resolving conflicts that others deemed impossible, Lyra had spent her career navigating the treacherous waters of imperial politics. Her sharp mind and unshakable composure had earned her the respect of her peers and the ire of those who feared her influence. Yet, for all her accomplishments, Lyra was acutely aware of the limitations imposed on her. In the eyes of the empire's patriarchal leadership, she was little more than a tool, a means to an end. Diplomacy, they believed, was women's work, necessary but ultimately inconsequential. The catalyst for change came during a high-stakes mission to the outer rim of the galaxy. The Empire had long exploited the resources of the frontier worlds, extracting their wealth while offering little in return. Tensions had reached a boiling point, and the leaders of the Outer Rim had issued an ultimatum. Either the Empire renegotiated its terms, or they would sever ties entirely. Lyra was dispatched to broker a deal, a task she approached with her usual determination. But what she encountered was not the usual pushback from stubborn negotiators. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with the Empire's true colors. The negotiations began with the usual pomp and circumstance, the Outer Rim leaders extending every courtesy to their imperial guests. But as the talks progressed, it became clear that the Empire had no intention of compromising. The demands from the imperial delegation were steep, bordering on exploitative, and Lyra found herself caught in the middle. She argued for fairness, for a deal that would benefit both sides, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. The Empire's representatives, all men, dismissed her concerns with patronizing smiles and veiled threats. When she pressed the issue, they turned on her, accusing her of undermining the Empire's interests. The message was clear. Her role was to enforce the Empire's will, not to question it. The final blow came when the Empire's lead negotiator, a smug bureaucrat named Garrick Thorne, publicly humiliated her. In front of the Outer Rim leaders, he stripped her of her authority, declaring that her emotional approach had jeopardized the mission. Lyra stood frozen, her cheeks burning with shame and anger, as Thorne took control of the negotiations. The deal he struck was a disaster, a blatant power grab that left the Outer Rim leaders seething. As the Imperial delegation celebrated their victory, Lyra slipped away, her mind racing. That night, alone in her quarters, Lyra allowed herself to feel the full weight of her frustration. For years, she had played by the Empire's rules, believing that she could affect change from within. But now, she saw the truth. The Empire's reliance on diplomacy was a sham, a way to maintain control without resorting to outright violence. Women like her were not valued for their skills or insights. They were pawns, used to placate the masses while the real power remained in the hands of men like Thorne. The realization was both liberating and terrifying. If diplomacy was a tool of oppression, then it was time to stop being diplomatic. Lyra's first act of defiance was subtle but deliberate. She reached out to a handful of trusted allies, women who had also grown disillusioned with the Empire's empty promises. Together, they formed a covert network, a web of resistance that spanned the galaxy. Each member brought unique skills and perspectives, from military strategy to technological expertise, but they were united by a common goal: to dismantle the Empire's oppressive systems and build something better in their place. The network's first operation was a test of their capabilities. They targeted a remote Imperial outpost, a hub for the Empire's resource extraction operations. Using a combination of hacking, sabotage, and misdirection, they disabled the outpost's defenses and destroyed its stockpiles of stolen goods. The operation was a success, But more importantly, it sent a message. The Empire was not invincible. When news of the attack reached the imperial capital, the leadership dismissed it as the work of rogue elements, a minor inconvenience to be dealt with swiftly. But Lyra and her allies knew better. This was just the beginning. As the weeks turned into months, the network grew in size and influence. Women from all corners of the galaxy joined the cause, drawn by the promise of a future free from the Empire's tyranny. Lyra emerged as a natural leader, her strategic mind and unwavering resolve inspiring those around her. Yet, even as the rebellion gained momentum, she remained acutely aware of the risks. The Empire was ruthless, and it would not hesitate to crush any threat to its power. But Lyra was no longer the woman who had stood silently as Thorn humiliated her. She had found her voice, and she would not be silenced. The section ends with Lyra standing on the bridge of a stolen Imperial ship, gazing out at the stars. Behind her, the members of her network work tirelessly, preparing for the next phase of their plan. The Empire, still oblivious to the true scale of the threat, continues its oppressive reign, confident in its dominance. But Lyra knows better. The storm is coming, and when it breaks, the galaxy will never be the same. The final lines hint at the battles to come, leaving the reader eager to see how Lyra and her allies will challenge the Empire's might. The Empire's response to the rebellion's first strike was swift and predictable. News of the outpost's destruction spread like wildfire, and the Imperial propaganda machine went into overdrive. Hollow feeds across the galaxy blared images of the smoking ruins, accompanied by stern warnings about the dangers of dissent. The official narrative painted the attackers as terrorists, rogue elements driven by greed and malice. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Whispers of the rebellion's true motives spread through the ranks of the oppressed, igniting a spark of hope that the Empire could not extinguish. Lyra Voss watched the Empire's reaction with a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. The attack had been a calculated risk, designed to test the Empire's defenses and rally support for the cause. It had succeeded on both counts. But Lyra knew the real battle was just beginning. The Empire would not take this lightly. They would retaliate with everything they had, and the rebellion would need to be ready. The network's next move was critical. Lyra gathered her closest allies, Commander Tala Ren, a former Imperial officer with a deep understanding of military strategy, Dr. Alara Voss, Lyra's younger sister and a brilliant engineer, and Kira Sol, a former smuggler with connections to the criminal underworld. Together, they devised a plan to strike at the heart of the Empire's power, the supply lines that fed its war machine. The operation was audacious in its scope and complexity. The Empire's supply lines were heavily guarded, a labyrinth of checkpoints and patrols designed to deter any would-be attackers. But Lyra and her team had one advantage the Empire could not match: the element of surprise. Using a combination of stolen Imperial codes and Kira's underworld contacts, they infiltrated a key supply depot on the planet Xerxes Prime. The depot was a sprawling complex, its warehouses filled with weapons, ammunition, and other vital supplies. Destroying it would deal a significant blow to the Empire's operations in the sector. The attack began under the cover of darkness. Tala led a team of rebels in a diversionary assault on the depot's outer defenses, drawing the attention of the guards while Lyra and Alara infiltrated the main compound. The sisters moved with precision, their years of training and experience evident in every step. They planted explosives at strategic points throughout the complex, their movements swift and silent. But as they prepared to make their escape, disaster struck. An Imperial patrol, alerted by the diversionary attack, stumbled upon their position. Lyra and Alara found themselves pinned down, their escape route cut off. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm them. But then Lyra remembered the words of her mentor, an old diplomat who had once told her, "In the face of adversity, a true leader finds strength in their purpose." She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves, and turned to Alara. "We need to buy ourselves some time," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Can you disable the security systems?" Alara nodded, her fingers flying over the control panel of her portable hacking device. Within seconds, the depot's alarms began to blare, and the lights flickered ominously. The patrol hesitated, confused by the sudden chaos. It was the opening Lyra needed. She grabbed Alara's hand and pulled her toward a nearby maintenance tunnel, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passageway. They emerged on the other side of the compound, just as the explosives detonated. The ground shook violently, and a deafening roar filled the air as the depot was consumed by fire and smoke. Lyra and Alara barely made it to safety, their bodies bruised and battered but their spirits unbroken. As they watched the flames rise into the night sky, Lyra felt a surge of triumph. The Empire would feel this blow, and the rebellion would grow stronger because of it. But the victory came at a cost. The attack on Xerxes Prime drew the Empire's full attention, and they responded with brutal efficiency. Imperial forces swept through the sector, rounding up suspected rebels and tightening their grip on the population. The network was forced to go underground, their operations becoming more covert and their movements more cautious. Lyra knew they could not afford another direct confrontation. Not yet. They needed to regroup, to gather their strength and plan their next move. It was during this time of uncertainty that Lyra received a message from an unexpected source. The sender was a woman named Zara Kale, a former Imperial scientist who had defected after witnessing the Empire's atrocities firsthand. Zara claimed to have information that could turn the tide of the rebellion. A secret project that the Empire had been developing in secret, one that could give them an unstoppable advantage. Lyra was skeptical at first. The Empire was known for its deceptions, and she had learned the hard way to trust no one. But something about Zara's message resonated with her. There was a desperation in the woman's words, a plea for help that Lyra could not ignore. After consulting with her allies, she decided to meet with Zara in person. The meeting took place on a remote asteroid, far from the prying eyes of the Empire. Zara was waiting for them when they arrived, her face pale and drawn but her eyes filled with determination. She wasted no time in revealing the truth. The Empire had been developing a new type of weapon, one capable of destroying entire planets. The project, codenamed Eclipse, was nearing completion, and if it was unleashed, it would spell doom for the rebellion and the galaxy. Lyra listened in stunned silence as Zara explained the details. The weapon was housed in a heavily fortified facility on the planet Korath, guarded by the Empire's most elite forces. Destroying it would be nearly impossible, but Zara believed it could be done. She had access to the facility schematics and security protocols, information that could give the rebels a fighting chance. The weight of the revelation settled over Lyra like a heavy cloak. The stakes had never been higher. If they failed, the Empire would crush the rebellion and impose its will on the galaxy with an iron fist. But if they succeeded, they could strike a blow that would change the course of history. As the meeting drew to a close, Lyra made a decision. They would take the fight to Korath no matter the cost. The rebellion had come too far to turn back now. She turned to her allies, her voice steady and resolute. "This is our moment," she said. "We have the knowledge, the skills, and the will to see this through. The Empire thinks it can silence us, but they're wrong. Together, we will show them what happens when women stop being diplomatic." The section ends with Lyra and her allies preparing for their most dangerous mission yet. The weight of their task hangs heavy in the air, but there is also a sense of determination, a belief that they can overcome any obstacle. The final lines hint at the challenges to come, leaving the reader eager to see how the rebellion will confront the Empire's ultimate weapon. The journey to Korath was fraught with tension, each passing moment a reminder of the enormity of the task ahead. Lyra Voss sat in the dimly lit command center of the stolen Imperial cruiser, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the planet displayed before her. Korath loomed large, its surface a patchwork of jagged mountains and sprawling industrial complexes. Somewhere beneath that hostile terrain lay the Eclipse facility, a fortress of steel and secrets that held the key to the Empire's dominance and its potential downfall. The rebellion's fleet was small but determined, a ragtag collection of stolen ships and repurposed freighters. Each vessel carried a crew of rebels, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resolve. They knew the odds were against them. The Empire's defenses were formidable, its forces trained to repel any threat with ruthless efficiency. But they also knew they had no choice. If they did not act now, the Eclipse weapon would be unleashed, and the galaxy would burn. Lyra's mind raced as she reviewed the plan one final time. Zara Kale's information had been invaluable, providing detailed schematics of the facility and its security systems. But even with this knowledge, the mission was a gamble. Success would require precision, timing, and a fair amount of luck. Failure was not an option. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the outskirts of Karatha's atmosphere, their arrival masked by a carefully timed solar flare. Lyra's ship, the Resolute, led the way, its engines humming softly as it descended toward the planet's surface. The atmosphere was thick with ash and debris, the remnants of the Empire's relentless mining operations. Visibility was poor, but Lyra welcomed the cover. It would make their approach harder to detect. As they neared the Eclipse facility, the tension aboard the Resolute became palpable. Lyra could feel the weight of her crew's expectations, their eyes on her as she issued orders with calm authority. She had always been a leader, but this was different. This was not just about strategy or diplomacy. This was about survival for herself, for her allies, and for the galaxy itself. The first sign of trouble came as they breached the facility's outer perimeter. A squadron of Imperial fighters emerged from the haze, their sleek forms cutting through the ash like knives. The rebels' ships scattered, evading the initial barrage of laser fire. Lyra gripped the edge of her console, her knuckles white as she watched the battle unfold. The Resolute shuddered under the impact of a near miss, but its shields held. "We need to buy ourselves some time," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Tala, take your team and disable their communications. We can't let them call for reinforcements." Tala nodded, her expression grim but determined. She led a small team of rebels in a daring maneuver, their ship weaving through the Imperial fighters with practiced ease. Within minutes, they had disabled the enemy's communication array, cutting off their ability to coordinate their defenses. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. With the Imperial fighters momentarily disoriented, the rebels pressed their advantage. Lyra's ship descended toward the facility's landing platform, its engines roaring as it touched down. The rebels poured out of the ship, their weapons at the ready. Lyra led the charge, her blaster in hand and her heart pounding in her chest. The facility's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, each one heavily guarded. But the rebels moved with purpose, their movements guided by Zara's schematics. The fighting was intense, the air filled with the crackle of blaster fire and the shouts of combatants. Lyra's team pushed forward, their progress slow but steady. They encountered resistance at every turn, but they were undeterred. Each step brought them closer to their goal, and each fallen enemy was a reminder of what was at stake. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, the chamber housing the Eclipse weapon. It was a massive structure, its surface gleaming with a cold, metallic sheen. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine as she approached it. This was the weapon that could destroy worlds, the embodiment of the Empire's cruelty and arrogance. And it was her responsibility to ensure it was never used. "Alara, can you disable it?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alara stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she examined the weapon's control panel. "It's heavily encrypted," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But I think I can bypass the security protocols. I just need time." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of danger. "We'll hold them off," she said. "Just do what you need to do." The minutes that followed were some of the longest of Lyra's life. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the chamber as her team fought to keep the Imperial forces at bay. Lyra herself was in the thick of the fighting, her blaster firing with unerring accuracy. She could feel the strain of the battle in every muscle, but she refused to give in to fatigue. Too much was riding on this moment. Finally, Alara's voice broke through the chaos. "I've got it," she shouted. "The weapon's disabled." A cheer went up from the rebels, but it was short-lived. The Imperial forces, realizing what had happened, redoubled their efforts. Lyra knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Fall back," she ordered. "We need to get out of here." The rebels retreated to the Resolute, their movements swift and disciplined. The ship's engines roared to life as they lifted off, the facility shrinking beneath them. Lyra watched from the viewport as the Eclipse weapon was consumed by a massive explosion, its destruction sending shockwaves through the facility. The rebels had done it. They had struck a blow against the Empire that would be felt across the galaxy. But as the Resolute ascended into the ash-filled sky, Lyra felt no sense of triumph. The battle was far from over. The Empire would not take this defeat lightly, and they would retaliate with everything they had. The rebellion had won a victory, but the war was just beginning. As the ship entered hyperspace, Lyra turned to her allies, her expression resolute. "This is just the beginning," she said. "The Empire will come for us, and we need to be ready. But we've shown them what we're capable of. Together, we can build a better future. One where no one has to live under their tyranny." The section ends with the rebels regrouping, their spirits buoyed by their victory, but tempered by the knowledge of the challenges ahead. Lyra's words linger in the air, a promise of hope and determination. The final lines hint at the battles to come, leaving the reader eager to see how the rebellion will continue to fight for the galaxy's future.